When I was 17, I thought I had life figured out. I was in love, finishing high school, and dreaming of college. But one mistake changed everything. When I found out I was pregnant in my final year of school, my world crumbled. I remember sitting in my room, holding that little test, trembling as I thought about how to tell my parents. I had always been their perfect daughter, the one who brought home good grades and never broke the rules. When I told them, their faces froze. My mother's tears fell faster than her words, and my father's silence was louder than any shout. That night, after hours of arguing, he said the words that shattered my heart. "If you want to be an adult, then live like one. Get out of my house." I begged them, crying on my knees, but they didn't care. They packed my bags, and by morning, I was standing on the porch, watching the door close behind me. I had nowhere to go. My boyfriend, Daniel, panicked when I told him, and within a week, he was gone too. I spent nights at a friend's couch, worked small jobs, and struggled to survive. When my belly grew, so did people's judgment. But somehow I made it. I finished school through an online program, gave birth to a beautiful daughter named Lily, and promised her she would never face the pain I did. The first few years were the hardest. There were days when I ate nothing so Lily could have formula. Nights when I cried silently so she wouldn't hear. But slowly, life started to change. I found a steady job at a local daycare, and a kind woman named Mrs. Carter helped me rent a small apartment. Lily grew up surrounded by love, even if we didn't have much. Years passed. I worked hard, studied part-time, and eventually opened my own daycare center. It became successful beyond anything I imagined. Parents trusted me, children adored me, and my name began to mean something again. I built a life from the ruins my parents left me in. Lily grew into a bright, kind young woman, everything I hoped she would be. When she graduated high school, I cried harder than I ever had. I thought about how far we'd come, how I once stood outside my parents' home with nothing but a bag, and now I had a business, a home, and a future. I thought I had moved on. But life had one last surprise. One afternoon, I received a letter from a law firm. It said my parents were filing a lawsuit against me. At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake. But it wasn't. They claimed they were entitled to a share of my daycare profits because it was built on family property. Apparently, the old house where I started my first small daycare years ago had once belonged to them before they sold it to me cheaply out of desperation. I sat in shock, staring at the papers. 18 years had passed without a single phone call, and now they wanted money. I couldn't believe it. The same people who threw me out when I needed them most were now trying to take what I'd worked for. I felt a mix of anger and sadness that I couldn't describe. When the court date came, I saw them for the first time in almost 2 decades. My father looked older, frail even, but his eyes were still cold. My mother couldn't meet my gaze. I stood in front of them, not as the scared teenager they'd abandoned, but as a woman who had survived without their help. The judge listened as their lawyer spoke about family contribution and financial rights. My lawyer calmly showed every receipt, every payment, and every record proving that I had bought and built everything myself. When it was my turn to speak, I told the court my story. I didn't cry. I just told the truth. How they threw me out, how I struggled, and how every success I had came from my own hands. The courtroom was silent when I finished. My parents didn't look up. The judge ruled in my favor, stating that they had no claim to my business or property. It was a victory, but it didn't feel like one. As I walked out, I saw my mother's eyes glisten with regret. For a moment, I thought she might say something, but she didn't. That night, I sat with Lily and told her everything. She held my hand and said, "Mom, you didn't just survive, you built a legacy." Her words broke something open inside me. For years, I had carried the pain of rejection, but hearing that from my daughter healed a part of me that had stayed wounded since I was 17. A few weeks later, I got a letter again, this time from my mother. She apologized, saying they were ashamed and desperate. My father's health was failing, and they needed money. She didn't ask for forgiveness, only said she wished she could turn back time. I didn't reply right away. It took me months to find the right words. When I finally wrote back, I told her I forgave them, but forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. I offered to help pay for my father's medical bills, not because I owed them, but because I wanted to end the cycle of pain. She thanked me quietly, and that was the last time I heard from them. 18 years after being thrown out, I stood in the same town where it all began. The wind felt the same, but I wasn't that frightened girl anymore. I was a mother, a business owner, and a woman who turned her scars into strength. My parents might have tried to break me, but in the end, they only made me stronger.